Hello, 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 hello. This is Extreme Orange. Welcome to the Extreme Exchange. Today I'm joined with good friends from Primus here, Brendan. Okay. Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Extreme Exchange. And today I have quite a few guests with me. First are some familiar faces, Matthew and Minyi. Say hi.
Hello.
And we have another special guest today. His name is Donovan Sim. So Donovan was mine and Matthew's senior back in school. We were both in the same CCA, the Boys Brigade together. That's how we know each other. Yeah, so Dono is currently studying economics in Cambridge. Yeah, so very nice to have all of you on the show today.
Glad to be here. Yeah,
So-
it's a book, right, that talks about this political theory. It's called selectorate theory. And in a nutshell, and I'm heavily generalizing here, it talks about how ultimately outcomes in government depend on who is holding those in power accountable. And therefore, I think it's more accurate to say that the lowest common denominator in laws around the world is that they try to guarantee the welfare of a select in-group, for example. I mean, more left-leaning progressive people will call for laws to apply to everyone within a jurisdiction, right? Whether or not they are legal or illegal immigrants, for example, whether or not they are from the country or they are foreigners. Whereas perhaps in a country where there was a very much stronger right-wing nationalist sentiment, right? I would think that the laws are much more geared to protecting their own nationals. Or maybe if there was a country where the only people keeping the government in account was, I don't know, the military, for example, then perhaps laws might be there to privilege the military over everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess it really depends on who holds the ability to keep people in power accountable.
That's a good point.
I think I agree. Like for most cases as well, for most countries, laws are the primary purpose of laws seem to be more of protecting the country's own people rather than upholding a sense of morality. Because, like for example, you see, like for an example, jaywalking laws. Like the reason why jaywalking is punished is less because it's immoral, more because it endangers other citizens. Yeah, so it seems to be.
That's a good example. So okay. So this brings up a very good point. That means that there are things. There are a set of actions that could be immoral, but not harmful. Let's say. So this is another very interesting question to ask. Should everything that's immoral be illegal? Because it's definitely so that there are immoral things that don't have that much of a consequence on like human welfare, for example, or societal welfare, right? But in a certain religious context, maybe it's wrong to do, right? So the question is open: should everything immoral be illegal?
Well, the way I see it, right, I come from a very pragmatic way of thinking, and it's that I'm guessing it's very hard to have a law if you cannot enforce it. And I think there are a lot of amoral behaviors that can't be enforced. And I would struggle to see how the government would I don't know, enforce a law against me, preventing me from telling white lies, for example. Yeah.
Minnie, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, like I wanted to say just now when you were talking about whether laws are reflective of societal morals, that I think that laws are like a non-exhaustive list of what society deems moral or immoral. So while I would say that it's like a subset, so everything that's included in the law usually reflects like the moral standards which the society has. There are a lot of things which you said can be considered immoral but cannot be enforced because of like practicality concerns, or also because like it just doesn't have the same level of impact on disruptiveness on society as compared to like bigger quote unquote bigger immoral deeds which would negatively impact society, which brings to the point whether like the purpose of having morals and the purpose of having laws are two very different things.
Mm.
So because of that, because the purpose of morals is to guide you to have like a moral life, a good life, like assuming that there are consequences for your actions. But on the other hand, like the purpose of laws, I mean, this can be debated, but most would say the purpose of laws is to like uphold order in a society, or as you said, to preserve the rights of other people. So if what you do, even if it's like immoral, if it doesn't compromise these purposes, then there's no need for them to be enacted into law, even if it was practical or possible to do so.
So that means that I guess the point of enforceability, because I wanted to respond by saying that let's assume that enforceability isn't a question, right? Say it's like you have the means to enforce, making sure people don't tell white lies, for example. If that's the case, is it still under the law's purview to outlaw it? And I think what you said was pretty accurate, is that it's not under the law's purview, because it's not something that would affect the societal welfare at large. So it shouldn't be outlawed. I'm trying my best not to raise 377A here, but it's a really good example. So I will keep it as general as possible. What I wanted to unpack was that right now we are in a setting where certain laws are being screened and seen as no longer fit to be part of the law, right? Mainly because people now open their eyes and they see the law and they say, well, this isn't exactly something that needs to be outlawed. This is, it doesn't affect my welfare, it doesn't affect other people's welfare. In fact, it helps other people do whatever they want, and it gives them greater freedom, right? So they take a look at these laws and they say, so this shouldn't be outlawed, let's repeal it, right? So the thing is, the reason why this law was there was because a certain religion or ideology said that this isn't right, it's amoral, and then it was outlawed. So the question now for these religious people is, should they be backing the repealing of such laws? Because on the one hand, it opposes their own religion, right, to repeal it. But on the other hand, we work for the good of the law, and we want to make sure that the law is as faithful to what the law is supposed to do as possible, which is, as we discussed, to ensure the welfare of people, right, and nothing else. So there lies the conundrum, right? What should the religious person do? Yeah.
Because we are a Christian, does it have any practical use of it being in the law, like in a Christian perspective? Meaning to say that is it better for us Christians, or is it more right to force someone who does not believe in the religion that we believe to simply follow the laws of our religion? And what good does that do?
I think we can take it even further, because even if it's somebody who does believe in what we believe, right? Should it doesn't necessarily mean that we should make it illegal for them. Mainly because the punishment of an immoral act is God's to deliver, not ours. So it's like taking the revenge into your own hands, you know. It's like saying, you disobeyed God's law, so I'm gonna punish you for it. Rather than I'm gonna tell you that this is something that God doesn't desire, but if you do it, I will let God deal with you on your own. You are free to do it, but you have to suffer the consequences that God unleashes on you. You know, it's a very different approach to morality, I guess.
Well, maybe I'll share, and this is not my perspective. This is I was reading some Catholic writings, and this is what they were writing about. You know, recently there was that thing about IVF, in vitro fertilization in Singapore, right? And then they were talking about, you know, whether or not religious laws should apply, you know, into the state. And okay, so there's one question: is that should I sign a petition calling for the legalization of social egg freezing, even though I won't do it? Shouldn't I give others the option to do it? And the answer is, of course not, for every reason already mentioned. The law of God is not a piece of legislation scrawled out onto some stone tablets. It defines and encompasses the human nature. And what else they say? Even those of us who do not believe they are under the law of God, they in fact are. It is no different from being bound to earth by gravity, even if we do not believe we ought to be falling back down after we jump. If we want the best for our neighbor and society, we ought not to advocate for practices which lead to complicated moral situations. In fact, we ought to advocate against them. Yeah, so I mean, I just summarized stuff that they wrote. So I suppose from their point of view, the things that they advocate against, they view as very large social ills that apply to the whole society and not just themselves. I would think that they don't necessarily hold this to be true of every single Catholic precept, but I think this implies that they do have some line that after you cross, they will fight against. I'm not sure where the line would be though. And of course, that's the Catholic perspective. I'm not sure what other religions might advocate.
It's a fair counter argument, in my opinion. It's the counter argument that actually the moral laws are universal and they do have consequences. Just that, well, I mean,
Well, at least from the Christian's perspective.
Yeah, correct. But from the Christian perspective, it is universal, right? So, let's use Christianity as a stepping point. So from the Christian perspective, it is completely universal and true that if you disobey the moral laws, some really bad stuff will happen to you either now or in your next life, after you die, right? So in that sense, it makes perfect sense to outlaw something that is immoral because it does not ensure your future welfare. Thank you everybody so much for watching this episode of The Extreme Exchange. I will see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Like